This is an article I highlighted about a week ago. Pastor Mark Burns, President Trump's top pastor, visited Ukraine. And this is an important story because he could actually have an impact or an influence on Trump in a positive way. Pastor Burns saw the aftermath of the Russian army's crimes against the civilian population in Bucha, Irpin, Bordanka. He also personally heard the memories of the witnesses who survived, and this has changed him. Now, first, let's go and look at who this guy is. Pastor Burns is an American evangelical minister, televangelist, politician who is the pastor of Harvest Praise and Worship Center in South Carolina. He was an early supporter of Donald Trump, and in 2016 and in 2023, a board member of this group of pastors that support Donald Trump. Okay, so now, he's got the president's ear. He's somebody that the president will listen to. Now, here's what he has said after his visit, immediately then, and this was back in March 31st. After the visit, he said, "The war in Ukraine is bigger than Democrats or Republicans, the left or the right. Whether you dislike President Trump or President Zelensky, real people are dying here. 20,000 children have been kidnapped and stolen to Russia. 300 women were recently raped, as reported by multi-faith religious leaders. 700 religious buildings have been destroyed on purpose because they are often the only source of hope offered to the Ukrainian people." Now, this 700 religious buildings is a really interesting figure as well, because the pervasive message that comes out from, say, Tucker Carlson is a very one-sided, very narrow. The Ukrainians, they're stopping an entire religion. Well, no, it's the Moscow Patriarchate of the Russian Orthodox Church that's using the church. Like, if you understood how Moscow was actually using the church to spread propaganda or material or whatever else, you'd be horrified if you were a Christian in the United States. But that's not the message that they get. They just hear that Russia is doing something bad to Christians. But the Russians, 700 religious buildings have been destroyed on purpose because they're often the only sole source of hope. Okay, and then he concluded the innocent non-soldiers shot in the back of the head with their hands tied behind their backs. Okay, so you got the visit, you got to see it firsthand to understand what was going on, to get ground truth. Okay, so then a week later, we see this, April 6th. Yesterday, he's posting on Twitter, Russian missiles struck Kryvyi, killing 16, including 6 children. Tragic loss of innocent lives. The world must condemn this brutality and stand with Ukraine against such tea. Faith is a choice, not a feeling. Okay, so it's carried on. It didn't just evaporate after he left the country, so that's good. And then here, this is April 11th, a few days later. This week, Burns is urging him, that's Trump, to send Kyiv more tanks, fighter jets, and air defense. Okay. Good. So this is somebody who can actually make some kind of difference in Trump's calculus, because when the left yells at Trump, it's tone deaf. It's not, you've got to do something about Ukraine. Well, Russia hoax. But when someone from his own side is speaking to him, someone that he trusts, it's a different effect. I'm going to show you 2 clips from him speaking to the Kyiv Post, and you'll get to hear him.
I was wrong. I now believe that supporting Ukraine is America first. And once you see the atrocities at the hands of the Russians, that is just pure evil. Politics goes out the window.
So last month, you agreed with President Trump when he paused military aid for Ukraine. But this week, you're now actually calling on him to send more tanks, fighter jets, and weapons to Ukraine. What's changed in that time?
Well, Well, I mean, obviously, being on the ground in Ukraine has changed my opinion significantly. I am on record for being one of the staunch opponents of supporting, continuing supporting Ukraine in my previous posts and comments and interviews. But it took me being in Kyiv, being at Bucha, seeing the atrocities that has taken place, not military strategic points, but innocent lives being killed, executed, and knowing the 700 religious institutions to be intentionally targeted by the Russians, seeing and discovering 20,000 children have been kidnapped and deported to Russia. Not including the 1.3 million children that are unaccounted for. When you're hearing of these atrocities, looking at the white bandanas that was placed on the arms of civilians to identify themselves as civilians, so that the Russian soldiers don't do them any harm, but to see these Russian soldiers take these very same bandanas and use them to tie the hands of older women and adults, innocent civilians, and shooting them, senselessly killing them, it changed my perspective significantly. Support of Ukraine. We're even seeing more Republicans, conservatives, MAGA, Make America Great Again, individuals such as myself. Since my visit, is now coming out and speaking their support for Ukraine, putting pressure onto Congress to act and to support the initiatives that President Trump is putting forth. And so for that, I'm very optimistic that this war will be coming to an end sooner than later.
I mean, ultimately,